Hey everybody! Did I knock something over? No, I'm good. I'm good. Welcome back to another episode of Bi-Weekly Roundup. I made this video to talk about some movies and also to sort of discuss how I'm going to be doing this show from now on. So I really like doing this show, but I really hate scripting it. I'm not going to be scripting these anymore because I just flat out won't be able to continue doing this series if I have to put time into scripting this as well as Bad Movie Touch and also the new shows that I will be premiering hopefully later this month. That's my goal, but we'll see. But enough about that, let's talk about Sony Bad Idea number 376. Some of you might be saying 376, that seems kinda low, but don't worry, the counter resets every hour. They're still exactly where they've always been. So this is a movie that I knew about. It's not really something I could say I was looking forward to or had any real hope of being watchable, but I was aware that it was happening. Now, regardless of what this shirt might suggest, I'm not a huge Venom fan. I was when I was younger, and I don't think I've grown any since then. Oh, that's a great realization I just came to. So I didn't really have that much interest in this movie. The main hook for me was the fact that it had Tom Hardy in it, so that seemed like they actually at least kind of cared. But it's that type of thing where it's like, if they really care about a character in a comic book line you don't necessarily care about, is that good? It's basically come to the point with these superhero movies where if it's not a Marvel Studios thing, I get extremely hesitant. I'm just going by statistics here. Most movies I've seen that don't carry that logo nowadays, that deal with the superhero stuff, aren't that good. It seemed like Sony was really sticking to, doing an R-rated thing, much in the vein of Logan or Deadpool, and I'm like, that's cool. That's a way to distinguish yourself from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, since Disney won't do any R-rated movies. But then that hope dwindled as it looked more and more likely that the film was going to be cut down to a PG-13 rating just for the possibility of meeting Spider-Man in the future. Now we're here at whatever this is. So I feel like a lot of what I have to say about this movie has kind of already been said. I am reviewing this one kind of late, but there are a few things that I just really want to talk about because this movie is odd. So let's start with something that was good, but kind of weird. Tom Hardy's performance. I'm trying to think of a way to say this that doesn't sound... he acts like he has some sort of mental disorder in this movie. It's a good performance, it's a committed performance, but I have no idea why Tom Hardy is just always slouching and he talks like this, everybody's got their problems, And that little goofy touch to it definitely isn't helped by the terrible CGI. Seriously, there are moments in this film where I was having Spawn flashbacks, and it wasn't good. It wasn't a good time. Wait, that's another weird edgelord character created by Todd McFarlane. Oh my god, everything's intersecting! But yeah, plenty of moments in this movie just look horrible. The cinematography has this boring, flat look to it, and everything's just very blue. It's that generic Sony blue look. It's usually this just weird, gross color scheme. Towards the end, you've seen it in the trailers because it's a Sony movie, so of course you've seen most of the movie in the trailers already. But towards the end, there's this big goo fight, and it's just like, it looks like a screensaver. It looks like that little pipe thing. This movie does not match everything up perfectly. The CGI looks really bad. And I can't even say that if they used a practical, solution, maybe they had a guy who was, in a partial suit, sort of like what they originally did for Iron Man before, Robert Downey Jr. just hit the point of, I'm not putting that shit on anymore, you can't make me. I still don't think it would have looked that good, because any practical thing in this movie doesn't look that good either. Michelle Williams' character is in this wig for the entire movie, and normally, I'm pretty bad at detecting wigs, but I can tell when it's just the most obviously fake hair that never seems to move from its position. And for most of the movie, you're like, oh, okay, it's just one bad wig. I bet, sometimes they gotta put someone in a wig. But then they got this after credits scene, and Woody Harrelson's showing up in this horrible Carrot Top wig, and you're like, oh my god, CGI wigs, yeah, that's two things that, we just can't afford to chill out for you. You're gonna have to make do with what you got. What's that? We can't afford audio engineering? Just throw in some Wilhelm screams. Don't even mask them. Just it doesn't matter. If you can't tell, I didn't really hate this movie that much. I kind of thought it was hilarious. And it's not always trying to be. To be fair to the movie, there are a lot of moments where the humor is very clearly intentional. Venom is a goofy, funny character, and they play around with that, and Tom Hardy's, physical comedy actually works out quite well in some scenes. But what's so odd about this movie is it feels like it came out 20 years ago. This honestly feels like a slightly darker update of The Mask. Hit it! Now, I know a lot of people have been saying that, and to be clear, if you haven't read the Mask comics, somebody needs to make a hard R Mask movie right away, because those things are brutal. But this didn't really go in the full ultra-violent direction that I think something like that would have to take. It definitely held back in a lot of places, and you can tell this movie feels like your typical Sony hack job. And apparently, 45 minutes were cut out of this movie, and I have no idea how that is possible, because this movie feels like it takes forever. Like, the second half of it moves along at a pretty decent pace, and once Venom shows up, the goofy fun's there pretty consistently, but it doesn't change the fact that leading up to that point, it's just not interesting at all. And it kind of makes you hate this main character because he's just an idiot, which, to be fair, is true to the comics, but maybe that's why he's typically a villain in somebody else's stories. I think that's really what it comes down to, is this just is not an interesting character to make a movie about. All of his storylines are like, I got the goo on me, and I gotta fight somebody else. Maybe they have the goo, maybe they don't have the goo. It's not very engaging, is it? And I just have to talk very briefly about the after credits scene, because it feels like it was written by, like, a robot. You got Woody Harrelson in this terrible wig. He's just standing there, and he turns around, he's like, when I get out, there's gonna be carnage. It's like... And overall, it's another one of those cases where the tone seems to be determined by roulette wheel. But the one thing I will say about this movie is I am fully on board for the sequel now, because the thought of Woody Harrelson running around in this fucking carrot top wig, fighting CGI goo Tom Hardy, and going by the name Cletus, that sounds amazing. That sounds like it's going to win Best Picture, Best Screenplay, Best Adapted Screenplay. The Oscars are going to introduce a new category just for that one. And the only film it's ever going to be credited to is the one film where Woody Harrelson ran around looking like Shaun White. And please make this movie, Sony. Why'd I have to tell them to make the movie? If there's money to be made, they'll make it, and it'll suck. And really, with this one, there isn't that much to talk about other than that. There's no real twists. There's no real, interesting story beats. It's just kind of this movie where nobody really goes through any kind of change, and then it just kind of ends. If you can find it as hilarious as I did, I'd actually kind of recommend it. But if you don't want to sit through all this goofy shit, if you have absolutely no interest in this, even the potentiality of it being incredibly funny, even if that doesn't interest you, then obviously don't go see it. But if you're looking for something that's very stupid, then by all means, go see it when ticket prices are not astronomical. Don't pay more than $8 to see it. That's my new rating system. All right, now that we've talked about Venom, let's move on to something that was actually good. Halloween. Oh, but wait. Which one am I talking about? Am I talking about the original Halloween? Am I talking about the Rob Zombie Halloween? Am I talking about this new Halloween? I'm so funny for pointing out that they all have the same title. This is such a unique point of criticism. So yeah, this is the newest movie in the Halloween franchise, a franchise I have a very deep reverence for. The original 1978 Halloween is one of my all-time favorite movies, and on top of that, it's one of the movies that actually got me into filmmaking. I'm not sure at what point I discovered I was really into horror movies, because I really didn't watch too many of them growing up. At a certain point, I just started examining old horror films, and while I was going through these films and examining them for the first time, it was then that I found Halloween. I wasn't really sure what to expect, and especially a movie from 1978 that was made on a shoestring budget, what could you really expect from that? But, yeah, I love this movie. I even sprung for, one of those fancy books that tells you all about it. So why do I have such a strong connection to this movie? Well, basically because this is a movie that I feel I could have made. Now, that's not to compare myself to John Carpenter. I'm just saying, if you look up the history of this movie, this really was an incredibly low-budget movie. They had to make a lot of sacrifices and roll the dice a lot of times, and the fact that it paid off so tremendously is just really inspiring. And also, I've just always had this love for the holiday of Halloween. That spooky atmosphere, seeing, the fall leaves, or if you lived where I lived growing up, the either mountains of snow or 70-degree weather. It was never right. The weather was never right. And this movie is just quintessential Halloween night viewing for me. This is just a tangent, as I'm one to go on, but I gotta really hand it to Scream Factory. They do these really cool Blu-ray re-releases where they'll do this new exclusive artwork and stuff, and then on the back side of it, they have the original. In movies where you have a slipcover, like I do for Halloween 3, yes, I like Halloween 3, you could actually flip the original side around, and then you got both of them. This movie's fine. I own 4 Halloween Blu-rays, and only 3 of those are actual movies that, you can go out and buy at the Blu-ray store. What the fuck is the Blu-ray store? We have what I like to call the complete cut. I didn't design this artwork. I think this was an actual poster that I found online, but I did design this. But what this is the first 3 films cut together into one movie. Now, some people might be saying, well, how could you do that if, Halloween 3 has absolutely nothing to do with the other Halloween movies? Well, let me say, I found a way, and you'll never know how I did it, because this is mine. Yeah, the Halloween movies kind of, right into the ground, but luckily this time we're wiping the slate clean. All those bad movies, they didn't happen. Even the movie where they already wiped the slate clean of a few of the other movies. Now, I know this confused some people at first, and I know I have friends who are actually really big fans of Halloween 2, so they weren't thrilled about that getting wiped from canon, but I mean, he's literally on fire at the end. On top of that, 2 introduced a very stupid plot point that the main character, Laurie Strode, is actually Michael Myers' long-lost sister. This is something I never really liked because I think it takes a lot of the mysteriousness away from the character. What's scary about Michael Myers is he's just this killer with no emotion or reason who's just going to keep coming for you. He doesn't really have a purpose, he just wants to kill. And that's what's so terrifying about him. And this movie totally brought that back. So I have a lot that I could talk about because there were moments in this movie where I was going, I don't know about this, and then other moments in the movie where I was just full-on cheering yes! If I had to say this movie had one big flaw, I would say that would mainly be balance. I never thought the balance was that out of whack, at least not enough for me to turn around on the film. Every time something came up that I didn't necessarily like, it was instantly replaced with 2 things that I thought were incredibly well done. But something I really want to talk about with this, and I think you're going to see everybody talking about, is Jamie Lee Curtis, because she is just amazing in this movie. I really like the writing for her. It felt very down to earth. It sort of legitimized this whole setup, waiting for the man who tried to murder her to come back one day. And it's not always a pretty picture. She's not a perfect person. She makes her own bad calls throughout the movie, and you can see that she is still dealing with this stress from this event all these years later. And I think her character and her performance and what she brings to the table really brings an emotional layer to this movie that I don't think any Halloween movie has had before. But there were also some performances in the movie I really wasn't on board for that much, at least not until the end. One of those being Judy Greer, who is an actor I really like. But there was, in particular, one exposition dump scene in this movie that just felt so lifeless. There's this part where she's telling her daughter this story, and it didn't feel genuine at all. It felt very wooden and fake, and it kind of took me out of the movie. And I was surprised because, like I said, she's a very good actor who I really enjoy. So I imagine it was probably a directorial issue because, to be fair, there are some directorial issues. There's a few characters who don't really seem to be reacting the way they should in the situation. They seem to be reacting more for a camera, more like a funny comedy scene, and I do think part of that comes from David Gordon Green. Now, I know he doesn't exclusively do comedies or stuff like that, but there were moments in this movie that felt like they were going for more of a comedic touch than was necessary in the moment. I also felt that the pacing was off in the beginning. Something about it just seemed... Shots and sequences seemed like they went on just a hair shorter than they probably should have. It felt very choppy. As much as I gushed about the original Halloween creating that feeling of the holiday and, creating that ambience, this movie really doesn't do that at all. I'd say the Halloween aesthetics and mood don't really come to the forefront here. This one felt like a much grayer experience. It definitely looked like a more generic slasher, which I wasn't too thrilled about. But that's all okay, because the things I didn't like genuinely get better as the movie goes along. For example, Judy Greer's performance improves tremendously by the end, to the point where she was actually contributing to one of my favorite moments in the movie. And the Halloween vibe really picks up towards the end too, and the final showdown in the house is just wonderful. You're seeing like human jack-o'-lanterns, and I don't even want to spoil any of this stuff, because to be honest, the scene involving that, for those who have seen it, that's probably one of my favorite sequences in the whole movie. But yeah, I just don't want to spoil anything towards the end, because while I think the beginning definitely has its flaws, the ending of this movie is just everything I wanted it to be. Which is weird, because there's a moment towards the end, and I think everybody's gonna know when it pops up, but I started getting so worried. I started going, oh no, this is going in a bad direction. I don't think this is the way we should go. But luckily, by the end of it, it caps it all off with a fantastic final chase sequence through this house. On top of this sequence being really cool and gratifying, you know, getting to see Jamie Lee Curtis finally kick the crap out of Michael Myers, but not in the funny slapstick way that she did it in H2O. Like, she hit him with a fire extinguisher.
That's a lot of damage. How about a little more?
Yeah, what was that? Like, getting to see it done in this way was so satisfying. And I even really like the way they handled the very end of it, even though it does leave it open for sequels. I saw it more of as an homage to the original, and I'm not gonna give away what happens, but I probably just gave away something to somebody, and somebody's gonna complain now. And I gotta say, one thing that really caught my attention right away was the classic Halloween font that they used. It's this bright orange, and it just looks great, and they have, you know, the classic Halloween opening sequence. The cut to that title sequence felt very abrupt and jarring, but I didn't really care that much, because it just filled me up with so much glee to see a sort of modern take on that classic intro shot to Halloween with the jack-o'-lantern and the titles and everything. To see a new version of that updated for this movie, that just filled me with so much excitement and had me on board for the movie. And because of this, I did overlook certain things that were bugging me at the time. It seemed like there were moments where things would really build up and then slow down for a little bit, and it didn't really always feel perfectly timed, but by the end of it, by that final scene, they really knew what they were doing with pacing, because that whole thing just feels amazing. As just a straight up sequel to the original Halloween movie, I think this is probably the best one we've gotten. It's certainly the only one that I can see having some sort of, you know, relevance in the genre. Because on top of being, you know, a slasher thriller movie, it does actually attempt to tackle some themes of abuse, even if it's not always at the forefront. And I think with everything happening in the world right now, that's an interesting theme to tackle. But overall, this was a really solid follow-up. It doesn't even come near the level of the original for me, but I've just accepted that no attempt to do that ever really would. It's a very specific thing for me. No other movie is really going to live up to that, but you know, this was an incredibly valiant effort, because this still produced a really good movie. I don't think it's anything to lose your mind over necessarily, but it's a very great, straightforward slasher that has a bit more of an emotional connection than I was expecting, and towards the end, I was really invested in the story of Laurie and Michael, like something that's just so incidental in the first movie. You know, Laurie's just the girl that Michael chases around. To see that flip around here, and to see that, you know, relationship between them be explored in a much better way than they had tried to do it previously, that was a really cool thing. So overall, yeah, I'm gonna recommend this one, especially if you're a fan of the first movie, and if you're not a fan of the other movies, but you really like the first movie, definitely go see this one, because this one might be more up your alley. And I've seen a lot of like hardcore Halloween fans like get really disappointed at this, but honestly, as someone who lists the first movie as one of their favorite films of all time, I really dug this. I really enjoyed it, and I was still able to see the flaws with it, but that didn't take away from the fact that this was a really fun experience for me. You could tell that Danny McBride and David Gordon Green really have a reverence for the original Halloween film, and that shines through here. And hell, this movie even pays tribute to the whole series. I caught little winks and nods. You could tell they actually really care about this series, but wanted to do something, you know, a little bit higher quality than maybe the series has been known for as of late. And go check it out if you want. Okay, so managed to talk about those without scripting it, and how long did that take? It took an hour. Okay, I guess this just happens no matter what then. So yeah, that's what I thought of these two movies. I enjoyed being more off the cuff this time. So this is probably how things are gonna be now. And if you like that, let me know down below. If you don't like that, let me know down below. You could also leave a suggestion for a movie you'd like me to check out, either on here or on my other show, Bad Movie Touch. Always love getting cool comments from you guys. If you liked the video, be sure to leave a like on it down below. And if you like all my other stuff, be sure to subscribe and don't forget to ring that little bell, because wait, do we still have to tell people to do that? I don't even know what these things do anymore. Subscribe to my channel if you like my stuff. I'm not gonna, you know what to do. If you like the stuff I create and you'd like to help me make it, well then you can head on over to my Patreon. You get lots of cool rewards, early access to videos, and your name on this end screen here. I'm incredibly thankful to all my wonderful patrons who keep me doing what I love to do. You can follow me on Twitter if you want to see me get mad about things that don't matter, and you can follow my movies Twitter if you want to get updates on that. That's almost done, and we'll have that out to you soon. Really excited for all you guys to see that, because we've been working really hard on it, and it's been a long goddamn time. So more info on all that soon. The new Bad Movie Touch should be up before Halloween. It's on Halloween Resurrection, and I'm really looking forward to talking about that. So yeah, come back for that if you like, and thanks so much for checking this video out. It really means the world to me, and I will see you guys soon. Remember when they said, don't worry, we'll keep Deadpool R-rated, and now they're releasing a PG-13 cut of Deadpool to see if people like it? Hey, don't see that! They're gonna start doing that! I don't think I need to tell people not to see that. Who pays to go to a theater to see a worse version of a movie that they could watch at home? Can I be a studio executive? I've got plenty of terrible ideas that I think will work out really well.